Emil, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tyson. Appreciate it.
So it was good. We got to chat a little bit before, and I want to start with the Swedish part. You, as you said, you don't look Swedish. I don't think you sound Swedish. So explain the connection to Sweden.
I don't look Swedish. I don't sound Swedish, but I think I am pretty much Swedish. But I was not born in Sweden. We moved to Sweden when I was a baby. I'm Armenian originally, born in Iran in 1980, right after the Iranian Revolution. So my parents took us. I'm the youngest of three kids, so they took us to Sweden because of the Iran-Iraq war. The revolution happened. So I grew up. I spent most of my life in Sweden. I graduated there. I went to university there. I worked at Ernst & Young there a couple of years before I decided to move to California, 2007. So I got here. My siblings moved out here way before me. So I just came out here to see what's happening. Applied for a job. I got a job at the larger firm. So you know what? Why not? And I met my wife at that time. And the next thing you know, you're married, you have babies, and the firm was created, and there's no going back to Sweden.
Definitely not.
But yeah, that you have a point. Anytime I say I'm from Sweden, I have to explain this because they look at me like, what the hell? Don't lie, man. You're short, you're the dark hair, you don't look anything like Swedish.
It's funny because I had to clarify because there's some things in their insight brief about you. I'm thinking like, well, I don't know if that makes sense.
Is this guy lying already to us?
No, not that you were lying. I thought maybe that I had done the research and gotten it wrong. But do you think anything about your background? Because you're very entrepreneurial, it seems. You own two companies, or at least a part of one company, and then you own the other one outright. Anything about your background you think that gives you an advantage over competition?
I think growing up in Sweden really helped me. Because you're coming to a new country as an immigrant. Even though I was very young, I was not a baby, but I was like 2 or 3 years old when we moved to Sweden. I spent most of my time in Sweden, most of my life. But my parents are still immigrants, or I was an immigrant also. But they came at a later age, and I saw them struggling. My dad used to have a restaurant back then in Sweden. My mom was working with 3 kids, and I saw their struggle. And I don't know, it maybe that really helped me to really work even harder. But it's not only about working harder. It's I saw my dad with his business, really uneducated. I think he stopped school at 6th grade. And when we moved to Sweden, he didn't know the language. He didn't know anything. It was a brand new country. And he, like 6 months or a year in, he opened up the business, the restaurant. So I think that has taught me a lot. But also in the area in Sweden where we lived, there's a lot of immigrants. And we interacted with a lot of different kind of people. Swedes, you name it, Arabs, Somalians, from millions of places. I think that taught me a lot with diversity, with being able to deal with different kind of people. And living in LA, as you know, it's a very diverse place, and I think that's been really, really helpful for me.
So that's interesting. And I mean, whenever I heard that, I heard community is kind of what I heard. You know, and obviously diversity is important too. But it did seem like more of the community part of the community aspect of it was pretty important. And I do wonder if, because you've moved to the States, and you've got 2 established businesses, how much does the community have an effect on, I guess, either the success of your business or your success in general? So
where I live right now, I live in LA in Glendale area, where there are a lot of Armenians that live in Glendale. Originally, I'm Armenian from Iran, raised in Sweden. And there's not many Armenians in Sweden. So when I first moved to Glendale, I was kind of in shock. So what the hell? Like, where are all these Armenians coming from? But Glendale has been very helpful for me, obviously, because first of all, as you mentioned, in the community, people want to work with people they feel comfortable with. That's one portion. But pretty quickly, I got involved with the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce, which got me a lot bigger connection, because there are a lot of Swedes here in LA, specifically in LA area, that are doing business, and very successful Swedes are moving out to California. And by being part of the Swedish American Chamber, I get in contact with them regularly, And that's really been helpful for my growth of the operation, definitely.
It seems like you've proactively sought out membership in groups or whatever, but is that part of your recipe for success? Is because I will tell you, like, whenever you came in, we talked to each other briefly, and then but I came in, we chatted. Like, you're very approachable, and I do wonder if just proactively, reaching out to people, proactively being involved in communities, like, I guess what role does that have in your success?
I don't think it's intentional, honestly.
Yeah.
Like the Swedish American Chamber was just a coincidence, and that happened by. I used to work with a bookkeeper who used to send me tax work back in the days when I first started, and he called me one day. And he didn't even know that I was from Sweden. He called me, "Oh, Emil, I have a tax client here. He's a foreigner. I have no clue what to do. Can you talk to him?" So, yeah, sure. Where is he from? He's from Sweden. I said, "Are you kidding me, man? I'm from Sweden." "Oh, no way." So I talked to him. So he became my client. And then he started referring me another Swedish client who was still, by the way, part of the Swedish American Chamber. So, you know what? You got to come and see us. So that portion was just a coincidence. But I like talking to people.
Sure.
That's for sure. That's the part of my job that I really like. That talking to people to see what could be done, filing a return or doing bookkeeping. That's not the sexy part in what we do. So, is it intentional? No, but is it helpful? I think definitely. Yeah, it definitely helps.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about the two businesses just for a second, because I want to make sure people have a better understanding as to what you do, and then I want to dig into some more of the details. Talk to me about the two different companies and the differences between the two.
Yeah. So when I first started, this is back in 2009, and if we go back a little bit, so I moved out to California from Sweden in 2007, and I got a job at the larger firm in Woodland Hills in California. I started working there, and I had already met my future wife, my wife today. We were we were getting married in the summer of 2009. April of 2009, I got laid off from my job. This is during the financial crisis, and about 20 to 30 people at that time got laid off the same day.
I was in law school at the time, and it seemed like a bloodbath.
Yeah, it was not fun. Yeah. And I was here at that time. I was here less than for 2 years. So I didn't know a lot of people. I didn't have connections. I said, what the hell am I doing? I'm getting married in a month or two. It was the weekend before my wife's wedding shower. So I started applying for jobs, obviously, as anybody would do. But I didn't want to go into the private industry. I got a lot of offers as an accounting manager or other positions at private firms. But I always wanted to have my own firm eventually, even though at that time it was too early for me.
Sure.
But there was no opportunities. So I said, you know what? The hell with this. I'm just going to open up my firm. It is what it is. Whatever happens, happens. And if I don't do it now, I might never do it. So we went to Sweden and Paris for our honeymoon and came back July of 2009. I just opened up my own firm with zero paying clients. I had clients, but none of them were paying because they were brothers, sister,
sure.
cousins. And then I was working with zero clients. I was still working 70 to 80 hours a week. At the point where my wife was getting worried at one point, what are you doing? We just got married. Are you cheating on me, or what's happening here?
Yeah.
I say, no, honey, don't worry. This is what it takes for me to just get up and running.
Did you work on the honeymoon? I got to ask you that, because
I didn't know, because I opened it up after I came back.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
I didn't do anything.
I didn't know if you were trying to put together a business plan while you were in Paris.
I didn't have a business plan.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I didn't have.
Most people don't. Yeah.
I just came back, and then I got introduced to another accountant who had an office. So I just rented a space from him. My first rent was $300.
Pretty good.
So
especially in LA.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It couldn't be any better. So I just started, and I didn't know any people. My point, why I'm going back that far, is I took on any type of clients. I remember going into the office on a Sunday for $100 tax return client.
Sure.
I had to. I didn't have any source of income. Looking back, would I do it again? Probably not.
I was going to ask you that, because I was curious about, was that a mistake?
It was a mistake.
Yeah.
It was a mistake, but at that time I felt like I didn't have any option, because I didn't have connections. I I didn't really know what to do. I was new to the country. My English, I was speaking English, but it was still a lot worse than what it is now. Even now, it's not great now either. So would I do it again? No. I would be a lot more strategic with what kind of client I was taking. So growing that firm, I grew it for 3 years, took on any type of client. And 3 years later, I merged with a retiring CPA, who, by the way, still is with the company. He's 78, 79 years old. He comes in and reads the newspaper.
Yeah, he comes to have fun.
Don't tell him that.
It's a social group, yeah.
So we merged our practices, and he wanted to slow down, so I took over the practice and started running the practice at that time. But that was not as helpful because he had been running his firm the way I had been running it in the past 3 years. He helped anybody who knocked on the door, anything the client wanted, the way the client wanted. There's no real systems or processes in place. So we went through massive, massive change after that. Not directly, because it took me a while to settle in with a new practice, because his firm was about 3 or 4 times bigger than mine at that time. So 2 or 3 years in, we went through massive change. We fired a lot of clients. I think we went from 750, 800 clients to less than 500 clients.
How painful was that?
It was not painful at all, actually. It was just scary.
Yeah.
At the beginning, it was scary. I was shit scared. What the hell? What is going to happen? But once it was done, it was the best thing I ever done. Because those were the clients that took most of my time. And that opened up so much more time for me to serve the clients that really wanted the service, that really appreciated the service.
Yeah.
So it was not painful, but it was scary.
Well, I wonder if there's a lesson in the fact that you end up partnering with someone that was pretty much just like you in how you ran the firm.
I would not do it again. I was just lucky with the partner.
Sure.
Varush Totlian. If it was any other person, this transaction would have been a disaster. He was, and he still is, very, very helpful, and he really wanted to make sure he helped me. He was not in it to make more money than he had done in the past. He was in it to help me to kind of make sure the practice could continue and in a good way. But the clienteles were not really great.
Sure.
So a lesson from that was I would probably not buy another practice.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Really? Because I was going to ask you if you thought that would be a wise growth strategy.
Because any practice you buy, you're going to have good and bad clients.
Sure.
That's the reality. It would be impossible not impossible, but very, very difficult to find a practice where all the clients are matching your ideal client. And there are plenty of clients out there, especially in our industry as an accountant. There's lack of accountants. So why not just spend the marketing dollars instead of all the headache and the transition and all that, and just try to get your own client and the client you want to work with and that appreciates you. So I would not buy another practice, no.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So eventually, though, you kind of worked your way. You're still involved in that part of the business, right?
Yeah.
But you're of a lesser role. So how did that take place?
So we changed, evolved throughout, and then pretty much right after the merger, we hired a senior accountant at that time, who really stepped in and put the sweat into the company. And about 5 or 6 years in, we made her partner. So Totlian stepped back, not a partner anymore, and we made Sibel, who is now running Abedian and Totlian, a partner.
Sure.
And the idea, obviously she deserves it, first of all, because she really put in her hard work. She had 2 young kids at that time, and she did what it needed to be done. And gradually she grew her responsibilities and the role in the company. And now she's running Abedian and Totlian. And Totlian is Varush, the old OG partner.
Right.
We kept his name still. And until last year, I was still involved. I was still running Abedian and Totlian until last year, where I decided that I only want to work with lawyers now.
How did you get the firm to a point where it was running without you?
It's the right people. It's about the people, and it starts with Sibel, my partner, and downwards. And it's impossible to run a firm yourself, doing everything yourself, obviously. So it's about the processes and the people, as we discussed a little bit earlier, just before we got on here. So you got to have the processes in place, and it's painful. To put the processes in place is not easy. For the longest time, I wanted to find a shortcut to get the processes in place. I want to buy them. I want to hire people to do it for me. Yes, you can hire people to help you, but the processes have to come from you, in my opinion. You have to be involved putting the processes together, at least the idea of the processes. You can hire people who can put them together and draft them and write them up and all of that. But for the process portion, I don't think there's any shortcuts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree that what I see quite a bit is people will have someone build the processes out for them, but they don't understand them, so they don't know what they are. And that's a massive problem if you don't understand fundamentally. Like, if you don't understand your processes, you fundamentally don't understand your business.
100%. And so there are two kind of people that could write your processes, right? The external people, coaches and business advisors, and internal people, such as your business partners, managers, or whoever. I believe more in your internal people doing it for you, but you still need to be involved. It's your firm. You need to come up with the way you and your firm want to work. So bottom line is there are no shortcuts. You have to go through the pain to put the process and systems and processes in place. And then the second portion is hiring. You got to hire, and you will fail. You will fail many, many times. I don't know in the best. If we go back one step, right after COVID, our business boomed significantly.
Oh, I bet it did. Yeah.
It was just crazy. Different reasons. A lot of businesses needed more advice and help. They were scared. But also a lot of older CPAs decided to just retire.
Oh, interesting. I wouldn't have thought that was an element of it, but that's interesting.
Because everything changed.
Yeah.
Now, instead of doing in-person meetings, they had to learn to do meetings over Zoom. And need to use their technology more often.
E-contracts, everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you say, you know what, I'm going to do it for another couple of years. What the hell with it? I'm just going to finish.
I will say that the thing that frustrated me the most about COVID, or one of the most, obviously it was a terrible time, but I felt we had a massive advantage electronically because we've been doing it for several years at that point, and it forced everybody else into that age, and that part frustrated me the most because now I don't think we had lawyers. I don't think we had a lot of people leave the industry. We obviously did have some, but doesn't seem like as many as the CPAs did.
It's the reason for CPAs is I don't have the statistic on it, but there are a big portion of CPAs that are in older ages, like retirement age. And CPAs typically don't retire at the age of 65 or 67. They work late until 70, 75 or whatever. So there are a lot of older CPAs, and those are the ones that really left. Not all of them, obviously, but a big portion. And not enough CPAs are getting into accounting. So there's a big gap in between there because it's not sexy.
No.
Accountant. Who want to go to the bar and say, I'm an accountant? Like, come on.
Well, I think that is the perception that is put out there on movies and things like that. I doubt it's really like that. I'm sure it's a lot more exciting than that, but that's great for you because, I mean, you're going to have an advantage over the next 2 decades at least.
At least.
Yeah.
The only challenge here is the hiring portion. If you can find as a firm, and it's same for lawyers, it's not much different. If you can find a formula for hiring people, whether it's offshoring, outsourcing, or internally, your business gonna thrive. And I think that's the same for law firms also, because there's gonna be a lot of business, and the more the tax code and the business world gets complicated, the more advice businesses need. So there's a lot of opportunities for sure.
I think one of the coolest things that like in our firm is when we get to the point where we were hiring for positions from within, where people were being promoted from within, and we had one where we had we wanted to move up 4 different people into different roles. So they were all getting promoted, and then we are going to hire a new person. But they're all contingent on each other. So we had to go like one person at a time. Are you interested in this role? We think you'd be perfect for it. Great. Next one, next. And all 4 ended up saying, yeah, we want these positions. And they all got moved up. It was the coolest thing. We had to announce, 4 promotions at the same time and then hiring a new person. So it was like that. To me, that's one of the coolest things we've done as a firm.
I've tried that. And that, in my opinion, at least, that's the best way of hiring.
Yeah.
And just promote within. I tried hiring at manager levels from outside instead of promoting seniors to managers. It's nowhere close to being as successful as hiring internally.
Why do you think that is?
First of all, the people, let's say seniors being promoted to manager, they've been with you for a few years. They know your systems, they know your processes, they know your business idea. So they know you and your operation. And I think they get more motivated. You motivate your team members by promoting them. Who wants to stay where they are for the rest of their life? Like that's not motivating. Sooner or later, they will leave you.
So I do want to ask you about the new company. Let's talk about that for a little bit, because you obviously you've been drawn to lawyers, right? And so you started the new company that's focusing just on lawyers. What was the reason for that?
Again, I think it was a coincidence that it was lawyers and not any other industry.
Yep.
But pretty quickly, I decided that I want to be specialized. Even though it took me many years until I got to that point. But when all this mess with the merger and I was getting clients and doing everything for them and I was just working day and night. The merger happened in 2013, January 1st of 2013. And my first son was born January 31st of 2013. So the first 6 to 12 months, I didn't see him. And that kind of was a wake-up call. We were like, Emil, we cannot do this. This is just the first kid, even though we got stuck on the second one. We don't only have 2. We don't have more. It sounds like I have a lot more, but you can't do this. Because I had gone through that with my dad. My dad worked as long as I can remember. He was working like 7 days a week, 9 to 10 a.m. in the morning to 11, 12 at night, because he had a restaurant. So I didn't want to do that mistake, but I was there at that point.
Sure.
So I need to change this to create a business that fits my lifestyle. And how can I do that? I can't do that by taking on any kind of client, like satisfying anybody who needs help. It's not doable. Let's specialize. And what can I specialize? It's not about just saying I'm specializing in entertainment industry or dentist. Okay, what do you do for them? You got to be able to provide the value that not many other accountants are doing.
So it sounds like, before you go further, it sounds like you had an issue early on where, and I wonder how much of it had to do with you seeing your dad working so many hours, where it sounds like early on you were working so much that it had an effect on your marriage. Would you say that? Because you said your wife was asking, hey, well, you're starting to question you're working so much. Do you think that you carried some of that, seeing what your dad was doing, into the business early on?
I think so. Because when I moved I was a little bit younger when I moved to California compared to when he moved from Iran to Sweden. He was probably late 30s. I was late 20s. But it's I don't know. It might be that immigrant mentality that you're in a new country. You got to make it. Like no one's gonna help you.
Sure.
And you just step up or get back to where you came from. So that made me work harder, definitely. But I think growing up and seeing that from my family, that hard work is part of our life. That probably is part of why I started doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I realized that that's not the only solution. Like you could be successful. You could run a firm. You could have a restaurant. I'm not specializing in restaurants, but comparing to my dad, without having to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. You don't have to do that.
It's a different world. Completely.
It's a different world.
Yeah, that's when you mentioned that your dad ran a restaurant. I was thinking, man, that's a tough life, because I don't think people realize how hard it is to run a restaurant. So when you go to a restaurant and you complain, listen, sometimes I just suck it up, because it's tough. Running a restaurant life is different. It's just a different.
It's probably one of the toughest industries out there.
Yeah. Because it's funny because like sometimes, and I don't know if you do this because you lived it, right? My parents didn't run a restaurant, but I've worked as a dishwasher in one before, and I saw the effect on the owners, how it's a tough life. But like there were times where like I will just, if I have a bad experience especially at a small restaurant, if it was like a chain, I don't care as much. But if it's like a mom and pop shop, if I have a bad experience, sometimes I'll just like, you know what, I'm gonna chalk that up as they had a bad day because it's tough. That's tough.
And I appreciate that, and that's the reality. My dad didn't have a huge restaurant. It was a mom and pop. There were two partners running an operation. It was a pretty successful business, and I didn't have to go work somewhere else because I had a job there, and he wanted me to work for him because that was the only time we really could spend time together.
Yeah.
So I remember growing up, anyways, from 8-9 years old, every Sunday, or as many Sundays as possible, I was spending time with him at the restaurant. We're going in together, working together, having lunch together.
That's kind of fun.
So that was our kind of bonding time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that has really built my character when it comes to working hard.
Yeah.
But is it the right way? Do you have to really work super, super hard? I don't know. I think yes, you do. It's a lie to say that you don't have to work hard when you open up your own business or your law firm. But it's more important to today's society work smarter because there are so many resources that we didn't have 30, 40 years ago. With the technology, with the offshoring, with everything is available. You name
Completely.
it. If we can think about it, it's out there.
Do you incorporate your kids into the business at all? Where you bring them to work and let them do things?
Yeah. They're still young. My youngest one is 8, oldest one is 11. He's turning 12 soon, but and it's hard for them to do accounting work, obviously. But they come in, they do shredding, they shred paper.
Sure.
Even though we have a shredding company come pick up the papers, but I put aside a bunch for him when they come in. I got them a small shredder. So yeah, I want them to learn, and I talk about it. And I remember growing up, my dad didn't talk too much about money or actually business, but I don't care. I don't mind. I want them to learn at the early stage about money because it's a big part of our lives.
Yeah.
And I share most of the thing with them, like what revenue is, what is it. We're going through a transition right now, actually, that is not official yet, but it will be official by the time we air. So maybe we can talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So the Abedian and Totlian portion is actually merging again.
Interesting. Okay.
As of today.
Breaking news. Okay.
As of today, actually. We're signing the documents later today.
Oh my gosh.
So we're merging with a larger firm, about 30, 35 employees. So we're talking about that merger, for example. I talk to my kids about that merger, what's happening, why are we doing it? Because they wonder, Dad, you've been running this firm for 15 years. Like, don't sell it, don't merge. They think I'm selling it, but it's not a really sell.
Yeah.
And I explain to them why we're doing it so they can learn, and I want to share with them. So I think it's important.
I think that's important too. I've got kids the same ages, so not exactly, but in the same range. So 13, 9, and 8. So our kids are right in that same realm, and we are always trying to explain why we're doing certain things. For example, like we're out here on work, but we brought them out, and so we talk about that. And so today's a work day for Daddy, and we brought them out. I don't know if you saw them whenever you
we
had them here for a little bit, but my wife felt more comfortable kind of taking them and not letting them make a bunch of noise. But I think getting them involved in all this, it's a good learning experience at the least. It doesn't mean they have to start a firm or anything like that.
No.
But I think it's a good experience for them.
No school will ever teach them this.
No
school will ever teach them the podcast portion of the dad's business, for example.
Right.
And especially today, it's relatively easy for kids nowadays compared to when our parents grew up and even when we grew up. So seeing that, for them to only see the good side of this world, everything is easy. Yeah, we live in a good area. We have good, nice cars. We travel. But that's not the reality always. That's not always what the life is about. And if we don't talk about it, they don't see Dad's hard work. Because you work hard. I'm sure you work very, very hard. You fly across the country to do this kind of events. And masterminds. It's good for them to see that we do this traveling, we do this, we do that, because there's hard work behind it. So please learn it, and so don't take it for granted.
I'm laughing because you're right, and I think that is 100% spot on. But I'm laughing because one of the first things my oldest son said when we got out here, he's like, "You have this much time to hang out whenever you come to these things?" And I said, "Well, because we came out a few days early." I was like, "No, we don't normally have this much time to hang out. We came out early because of you all. That's why we have so much time.
Just
to hang
because
out.
of that comment, he need to work harder.
Exactly
now,
right.
Put him to work.
Exactly right. But I want to go back to lawyers specifically. Why you focus on them? Because I think that's smart. You started a niche down. You started to attract the clients that you wanted and not the ones that you don't. So how has that helped you in your business, or has it? Maybe it hasn't.
It has significantly. So I joined this group, Provisors. It's nationwide.
Yeah, I know about
Provisors.
Yeah.
It's huge in California, but they're part of most of the country. And Provisors it's a networking group for accountants, lawyers, financial advisors, and some other professionals, but mainly those three professionals. So there are a lot of attorneys there. And getting in there, one started referring me a client, and they saw that we're doing a good job. And the next thing we know, we have a bunch of attorneys in our book. And that was, again, not intentional. It just happened.
Yeah.
The networking portion was intentional. I wanted to do networking because I didn't know a lot of people, so I needed to get to know people. So I noticed lawyers really need this help, because typically they're fantastic lawyers. They're good in courtroom. They're good drafting agreement. They're good. They sell cases. They're aggressive. But when you talk to them about accounting and financials, it's like they don't understand a word of what you're saying. And that was a surprise to me, actually, because you would think lawyers, they would understand it, but majority of lawyers don't, which is fine.
Sure.
Later on, I realized that's actually fine. That's not a problem, because they're great at what they do. Let them do what they do. Why do we have to spread us thin? So we got in more and more into attorneys, and attorneys accounting is a little bit different, as you know. You have the trust accounting. Specifically in California, I don't know if you're familiar with the Tom Girardi's case in California.
No, tell me about it.
Hotshot, the PI attorney who committed a lot of fraud, stole clients' funds.
I think I do know about this case. It was a ton of money,
I don't know, hundreds of millions.
Yeah, it was an amount that this was what, 5 years ago? Is that
about
right?
5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and he's still in court right now. I think he just during these days getting sentenced 14 or 16 years, something like that. Don't quote me on it, but so. After Tom Girardi's case, and that became a huge case, by the way. He was married to Beverly Hills Housewives, one of these younger girls, so it became even more a bigger case. So after that, the California State Bar revamped their entire trust accounting rules, which made it a lot more stricter for lawyers. Mm-hmm. So that was another trigger. Now we started getting. The State Bar was doing free marketing for us, basically, because the attorneys were scared, and now they have to sign off with their license renewal that their trust accounting is correct.
I mean, I think that most states have that requirement, don't they?
Yes, but there's an additional layer right now where I don't know exactly the wording of it, but they made it a lot more complicated, and you have to sign off, and it's a lot more stricter. And starting February, well, in a few weeks already, they will do random audits of trust.
That's how Iowa's does random audits too, where they go through. That's I think that's important.
Oh, they do that. So California didn't have that.
So I know Iowa doesn't. Now Missouri does not do it. Illinois does not do it.
There you go. Okay, so some states have it already.
Exactly. Yeah.
So California did not have that, and they tried to implement it for many, many years, but they never had the politicians' kind of support for it until the Tom Girardi's case, where they push it through. So starting next month, it will be random audits. So now attorneys are even more scared.
Sure.
So that led us to get into more and more into attorneys until up to now, where we do the trust accounting very, very good. So we got our name out there as the law firm specialist accountants. And the way it helped my firm is it standardized my firm a lot more. Yes, attorneys, there are a million different attorneys. You have PI, you have immigration, you have workers' comp, you have business attorneys, estate planning attorneys. But we understand their issues. That's how it really helped me. When I get a lead calling me, I'm talking to them. Before even they tell me what they want, 85% of the time, I know what they're looking for. I know what their issues are. So I need to listen to them, just confirm my understanding, and then give them a solution. Whereas if I do everything, if I do doctors, dentists, architects, restaurants, lawyers, you name it, manufacturing companies, every single company or industry will have its own issues and its own complications, where I will have to sit down and learn it every time, where it obviously will take a lot more time from me and my team to do that. So doing one thing and doing good helped me from my perspective, but also it helps me provide value to my law firms, because now I can help them. I'm not only doing their bookkeeping and tax filing and call it a day. We are Clio consultants. You familiar with Clio?
Nice. Yeah.
So I love Clio. I wish there was something like that in the accounting industry.
I am curious, because I think this will be helpful for people. What do you like so much about Clio?
It's so organized and it's so correct. You can, and it's not good for PI attorneys.
No, that's what I was wondering. Okay, gotcha.
So it's not yet, even though they came out with a PI part of it, it's still growing. So we're not using Clio for personal injury attorneys, but for hourly billing cases, it's fantastic, because it's the setup is right and it's easy to use, and it does so much than just billing. Yeah. So as a Clio consultants, we run Clio for our clients if they want us to do that. So that's another layer of value that we want to provide. We do the billing for them. We do the collections for them. We, if they want to, we pay their bills.
Collections is big. That's huge.
Collection, let me clarify that. So collection is not in form of collection agency.
Okay.
More of just following up to make sure they get paid.
Okay, gotcha. Well, that's still crucial.
I think that's even more important than the collection agency part, because 99%, if not more, we collect.
Yeah.
But it takes time.
Yeah, because you don't want to get to the collection agency
exactly
stage. Yeah.
So as a lawyer, especially if you're solo or just a couple of partners firm, you've done the work. They don't want to run after the client to collect. They don't feel that it's right to do that.
Yeah.
So they just throw us in the mix, and we do that on their behalf. So we do that for clients. And also the trust accounting, obviously, it's huge what we do with helping them be in compliance with the state bar regulations. And then we wrap up the year with very involved tax planning, which I think for me, that's the most fun part. Mm-hmm. That's when I get involved with most of my clients. Because
is that the most overlooked part, you think?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
By lawyers is what I mean.
By any CPA really providing services, because majority of CPAs are doing their bookkeeping. They don't see the clients. They prepare a return. February, March, they see the client. They sign the return, and they don't see them until next year again, which is, in my opinion, waste of knowledge, waste of experience, because CPAs sit on so much information. Because I see my clients' numbers every year. Every month, really. We do it monthly basis. I talk to them. I know so much about them. Sometimes I feel like I'm more a therapist than an accountant.
Yeah.
So for me to not utilize that knowledge that I have about the client, the experience I have with other law firms, and help my client, I would feel like it's waste of knowledge and waste of time. So a lot of CPAs are not doing it. They prepare a return. And I think that's where the biggest lack is for clients getting the value from CPAs. See them, get the advice, because the fee you will pay your CPA, if it's the right CPA, if they help you, provide you the value, you will save multiple of that. It's not even a question of how much the CPA can help you. So we put a lot of effort right after October 15 deadline. For the tax deadline, October 15th through end of December, we spent a lot of time talking to our clients several times during those 2.5 months, probably 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 times. We do the projection based on current situations. Say, okay, hey, Tyson, if we don't make any changes, if you don't implement any strategies, your liability will be 200,000, let's say.
Sure.
But we have these strategies for you. Let's do this kind of things. And there are millions of things you can do, anywhere from low-hanging fruit, from hiring your kids, for example, which is a good strategy from tax perspective. But in my opinion, I use that for teaching my kids about money.
Okay.
We go back to that, but
I do want to come back to that, because I've heard both sides of the story on that. So
let's come back to that. Yeah,
we'll come back to it. Yeah.
So anywhere from low-hanging fruit, really, you put kids on payroll, you save $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per kid. Yes, it's great, but it's not going to change your life. But to a lot more complicated strategies, from retirement plan implementation to even more complicated strategies, such as investment tax incentive strategy, investments that you can invest and get deductions at the same time.
So let's stay on this topic then, and that's the end of year, that tax planning, the things that lawyers can do to really shift it where they're not having to pay a big nut, or just reshaping things in their advantage. Let's start with the kids. So what is the right way of doing it? Because, and I think that and by the way, I've seen the other side of it is the things I've seen, like on YouTube shorts and like TikToks, where people are saying, oh, don't do this because X, Y, and Z. I'm sure there's a right way of doing it.
Yeah.
So if you're going to hire your kids, what's the right way of doing it?
So each state have its own rules for how old the kids can be and how many hours they can work. So each state, we got to be specific with each state, but just ignore the fact of how many hours and all that. But let's say my son is 11, turning 12. I'm paying, I think, $700 or $800 a month for him. He comes in maybe once, sometimes even twice. Summers, he comes in more often. He helps me with shredding. He helps us with the mail. He makes coffee. He just goes around and help anybody that wants. And I can't do bookkeeping, obviously, but whatever, anything else, administration work. And I think I can justify $700-800 a month for what he does. The important thing is to be able to justify the rate you're paying your kids. Like, I can't pay him $20,000 a year. Like, what is he doing for $20,000? But for $7,000-8,000 a year for what he does, I can justify it. And when you do that, you're able to deduct the pay, what you're paying to your kid, from your business income. So that goes down with, let's say, $10,000. If you pay your kid $10,000, your income goes down with $10,000. If you're in a 40% bracket, that will save you $4,000 in taxes. Your kid does not need to pay income tax, for up to $14,000 and change. So you could pay them up to $14,000 with them paying zero tax, but you saved 40% tax on whatever you pay them. But if you have an entity, if you have a corporation or an LLC, or tax as a partnership, they have to pay Social Security, Medicare tax on it, which is roughly 15% for employee. So employer is you as a company, employee is the kid, obviously. You're still 25% savings in the bracket there. You could structure it, if you have a sole proprietor, your spouse and kids don't need to pay Social Security, Medicare taxes. Okay. So it depends on what structure you have. I would not create a sole proprietorship just for this purpose, but if you are already a sole proprietor, then you save a little bit more compared to if you're a corporation.
So I've heard of people putting like kids in like marketing materials and things like that, and paying them a set amount. Is that a strategy that you could use?
If they're really in marketing, yeah.
Yeah.
With our other operation, not law firm operation, the general practice, we have a kind of a cooking show business. They do similar to podcasts, but it's for chefs, and they have cooking shows. So what they do, this owner's kids is actually part of the market. They're part of the marketing. It's on the flyers, on the website. So if IRS comes in and questions it, there's legit proof that this kid is on our marketing material. But in a law firm, I'm just thinking right now, how would I use my kid for my CPA for his marketing?
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I've got an idea as to how you could do it, and we didn't pay our kids to do this, so this is an example you could use. But we did some videos. It was during COVID, and we asked we had our kids do some videos about what I do for a living, and we had them talk about some other different things. I could see a scenario where you have it was fun, people liked it, and the kids loved it too. Like we got to mic them up and we posted it and all that. Where I could see something like that you could do, but you'd have to do it on a regular basis. So there's ways of doing it, but you're right. I mean, it would have to be like a regular social media campaign, almost like people do with animals, like on Instagram and stuff. Like have I think you could do something similar to that. I don't know. I don't feel super comfortable with that.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So I think you could do it. It's just you have to do it. It's got to be a plan. It's got to be planned. It can't just be some willy-nilly, couple posts a year.
As any other business expense, when clients ask me what can I deduct, you can deduct anything that we can justify as a business expense.
Sure.
Like really, a car might not be deduction for me, but might be deduction for you because I'm not driving for my business, for example, right?
Yep.
But you're driving a lot for your business. So that's a deduction for you, but not for me. Same with the kids. Like my kids might not be deductible, but yours might because you do a lot of social media and they help you and they put it up. Yeah. They might not even be on camera. They might be behind the scene. Let's say they're 15, 16-year-old. They're actually shooting the movies or the films.
What are some of the most clever things you've seen that people have deducted that have had a justification for it?
Clever things. We had one year, they deducted, I didn't take this deduction though, by the way. So they bought a car and it was not for the purpose of a car. So it was more like a marketing cost because personal injury firm, by the way, personal injury firm bought this car to test the damages that it caused. It was a Tesla.
Sure.
So they wanted to sue Tesla.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So we were not able to take that because they never actually crashed it or did anything with it.
Yeah.
But I can imagine if they actually buy it and let's say they crash it to test the seat belts or whatever, the seats or whatever, the braking system, that could possibly be a good deduction, but not as a car, but more as a research or marketing or some other.
What if they disassembled it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so then I've got like all these follow-up questions because let's say you disassemble it and then you have the mechanics put it back together and then can you then use it? I mean, that's one of those things, like, or do you have to then turn around and sell it?
So, well, if you sell it, then it's pointless because if you sell it, then you capture the deduction. Right. So there's no point doing that. But disassemble it, it's hard to say. It's come back to each specific case and what the justification is.
You sound like a lawyer. It depends.
Yeah, I work with lawyers. Yeah, I learn from them.
Yeah.
It's seriously, it's very difficult, and it might be deductible for one person, but not the next person.
Right.
So our tax planning is very, very custom made. Bookkeeping is a lot easier to scale and kind of standardize versus tax planning because tax planning is very, very personalized. I talk to each client specifically about their plan, about the implementation, whereas bookkeeping, we can standardize a lot more, obviously. So it's difficult. There's no clear answer to what could be or what's not deductible. But one answer that I always give my clients is, can we justify this? If IRS knocks on the door, ask about this deduction. Do we have a reasoning? Or did we just pick it from the above and just put it in the tax return?
You know what I find interesting about bookkeeping is, because we had to interview a lot of different bookkeepers for our injury firm, and the number that don't understand how personal injury works, how we pay out the money and then we get reimbursed at the end. It was fascinating how few accountants and bookkeepers did not understand how personal injury attorneys, how their business works. And so like we would ask, it was funny because we would ask do you understand how personal injury litigation works? All that. Oh yeah, we could completely help you. Okay, walk me through it. They couldn't walk. They had no clue. And I always try to analogize it in a way to like a construction company, where like if you're building a building, you're in a construction company, you're going to front a bunch of costs, even though a lot of them finance it. But we'll set that aside. So you finance it, and then after you sell the house, you're going to get the money back. I try to explain to them, and sometimes they would understand it. But why do you think so few bookkeepers understand what? And I'm specifically talking about injury lawyers. Why they just don't understand how injury lawyers work and how they operate. And
it's not only for injury lawyers, by the way. It's for many different practice areas where they have trust accounting. Accountants they don't know trust accounting. Majority of them. There's a lot of them who knows nothing, but majority don't know trust accounting. They don't understand. And it comes back to what we discussed a little bit earlier about specialization. It's not only that it simplified my operation with processes and systems and doing things the same way, but it helped me, as you said, provide the knowledge and experience to my law firms, because not many CPAs are doing it. And it comes back to specialization. I don't know all the ins and outs of manufacturing industries, the industry. I haven't done it. We might have had a couple of smaller ones in the past. So I don't take on manufacturing businesses because that's not my specialty. Why would I get into manufacturing when there's millions of law firms out there that need my help? I just take whatever whatever I know. Actually, that's a good friend of mine, attorney. She's a trust attorney, estate planning attorney in California. She keeps telling me that the human being are trying to learn things that we don't know. But why don't we just do things that we do good and improve that and become specialists in that and let other people do what we don't know, instead of wasting time trying to learn? That's not working everywhere, obviously. Sure. We want to develop our brain and we want to learn new things. But in business, I think that's very relevant.
I agree. I think we should clip that part of it. And that's a post, because I 100% agree with you. I'm a bit of a tinkerer too. I like learning new things and all that. So to a fault, sometimes I'll do that. But you're 100% right. In reality, we should just say, okay, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to go. I know someone who does it. Emil does this really well. Let's hire Emil to do it. I don't have to worry. I don't have to waste the time to learn any of that and do it the wrong way anyways, because I'm going to make a ton of mistakes learning it anyways.
Unless you really want to learn it for your own sake, and
Sure.
That's perfectly fine. You want to learn to play piano, then you got to learn to play piano, obviously. But in business, I think you just stick to what you do best. And to answer your question about why so many accountants don't know it, they just never learned it. And which is fine, but they should not try to get law firm clients.
Yeah,
because that creates more problem, because that law firm is not going to stay with them. They're going to spend a lot of time trying to learn it, trying to help the client. 6 months in, the lawyer will realize that this CPA doesn't know what they're doing, so they will start looking for someone else. They wasted the money, they wasted their time, and they're back to square one.
All right, I've got a silly question, I think. So I've seen I think it's QuickBooks or. Who does the accounting software that you can
QuickBooks.
Is it QuickBooks? So, or the one that they do the tax returns? Is that
TurboTax?
TurboTax. All right. So you see, okay, we tell you whether or not you're the likelihood of getting audited or something like that. Which I thought was I think it's kind of funny. But when you see something, if you look at a tax return, are there certain things that you see you're like, oh, that's a red flag? Because I wonder if you have your own human gauge to determine whether or not this is going to get audited or not.
100%.
What are some of those things that people know to look for to make sure that they're not doing?
Number one thing, typically most of lawyers are S corporations, mm-hmm. smaller law firms, whether they're LLPs, and then they have an S corporation in between the LLP and them personally, but majority are S corp. And as an S corp, you're required to take a reasonable salary from your company. That's an IRS guideline, because if you don't, you're cheating the IRS about 15%, because the earnings from your S corp is not subject to self-employment taxes. So that's why IRS requires owners of S corps to take reasonable salary compared to your industry and what you do for the business to pay the payroll taxes on the payroll portion, and they can save on the other one. Big red flag is when I see a return, $3 million revenue, let's say $1.2 million net profit, zero payroll.
Yeah.
And that line item is the first expense item on your tax return, on an S corporation return. So that's the number one thing I do. Correct your payroll, Because if you don't, sooner or later, they're going to knock on your door. And instead of doing maybe 110, 120,000 payroll, IRS will reclassify your entire profit to payroll if you don't have reasonable payroll.
Wow.
So that's a major thing that I would recommend all S Corp owners to be really careful with their reasonable salary.
So when we have a lawyer on the hot seat, a lot of times I'll do, one of my first questions is, especially if I sense that there's a cash flow problem, is I'll say, are you paying yourself a salary? And it's not because of that. It's just because usually they're not paying themselves a salary. They're just sucking everything out of the business. Every time they get paid, they just take it. And that causes a bunch of cash flow problems. So I think it's interesting how, to me, a red flag is for different reasons, is that you're not paying yourself a salary because you're causing yourself a bunch of cash flow problems. But so then there might be a double whammy. So you have not taken a salary, and so you've got massive swings in cash flow, which causes a bunch of problems. But then you get popped by the IRS because you got your earnings got reclassified as what I guess they call it
as wages.
As wages. And then you get a double whammy at the end.
Plus penalties and interest.
Right.
So it's going to cost. I've seen pretty bad situations where they don't take payroll. So that's the first thing we fix when we get a new client. One of the first things that we fix, that you got to get on payroll.
Is there a certain percentage that you recommend? Because I've heard a lot of different things. Should you be at a certain percentage of overall revenues or profits, or how do you look at it?
So depending on the profit, again, depending.
Yeah, sure.
But let's say if you make $200,000
in profit,
in net profit. When it comes to payroll, I'm just looking at the profit, because you can make $3 million revenue, and
that's why I call it an ego number. Revenue is an ego number.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's all it is.
So let's say 200,000, then probably about 50% of that is reasonable. But if you make $2 million profit, then you don't need to take 50% payroll. I typically max out the Social Security limit, which is about $165,000 to $170,000 if you make those numbers.
Sure.
A couple of $1 million, and then the rest is profit distribution, because there's nothing else for the IRS to get. The majority of benefit is in the Social Security that the IRS takes from you. The remaining amount is just Medicare, and which is like 2.9%. So they don't typically go look at it once you maxed out your Social Security limit.
Gotcha. I do wonder. So have you ever heard of Profit First?
Yeah, I wanted to actually mention that when you started talking about the payroll.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Profit First?
I like part of it, but not everything from it.
Interesting. I want to hear about the parts.
I like him. I like Mike, by the way. He's
Mike McCalloway. Motorbike Mike.
Yeah.
But what do you not like?
Especially for smaller firms, whatever he's talking about, because he talks about buckets, right? He talks about your income bucket, tax bucket, investment bucket. He talks about all this bucket, and specifically for smaller firms, it will create so much administration work. If you make 100,000 or 200,000 profit, first of all, you need to take about 100,000. I'm assuming, depending on what part of the country you live, but I'm assuming around 100,000 is fair for a lawyer to make, at least as a payroll. Yeah. Then the rest could come to you as a profit. And then you have another 100,000 left. You got to split those up in so many different buckets. The administration becomes a lot more difficult. Instead, what I like the payroll portion, because that's a key. First of all, from IRS requires it, but from cash flow management perspective also, I need 100,000 to survive. Okay, I take that out from the company. Whatever is left, end of the year, we pay out in bonuses or distribution. The remaining amount, I think you have to have a floating kind of plan, because your goals are 100% different from mine. You might be, I'm not younger than you, but if I'm younger than you, I'm looking to buy a house, then my investment bucket would be a lot bigger than my, travel bucket or my tax bucket or whatever buckets that are out there. So we need to look at each individual person's goals and customate it. That's part of the tax planning.
Sure.
But I like the idea as a whole, but some of the details are, in my opinion, a little bit too detailed, to be frank.
Okay. Where we kind of drew the line was, I'm not setting up an outside bank account to then transfer the funds into for like the tax planning. Like I'm just not doing that. I'm keeping it in that, and I understand the ideas. It's out of sight, out of mind. You're not, but I'm not just. That's just another. it's more administrative work that
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do. Like we're just
So you just keep it in the
we
account?
keep it in our main, not in the
That's
same, not the main account. We have a separate bucket inside of our main account at Bank of America. I guess I shouldn't tell people which bank I bank at, but we did initially set up an outside local bank to transfer the funds into, and we just were like, we're not doing this anymore. This is just, we're not doing it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It creates so much more work, and after a while, people stop doing it because they get busy with other things. So the idea is great. I like Mike Michalowicz. It's that one, and then he did the
Clockwork.
Right. Didn't he do the pumpkin patch too?
Yes, I have not read that one.
Yeah, it's good.
Is it good?
Yeah, I read that very early. That was one of the triggers for when I switched gears in my operation, start firing clients that we didn't like. So, he's awesome.
So what are some other, I want to make sure we hit some other red flags, some things that lawyers do that it's a no-no. And obviously I'm not talking about the obvious ones, like shouldn't be taking client money, shouldn't commingle funds, all that stuff. But are there some that are not as commonly known?
So the biggest issue that we see is commingling with trust accounting.
Yep.
That's, first of all, a problem from IRS perspective, because if you don't move funds from your trust account to your operating account when it's earned, it means you're not recognizing it as income, because trust money is not your money, and it's kind of two buckets. When we do accounting for our clients, we have two sets of classes, one trust account, one operating account. It's still in the same QuickBooks or accounting software, but if you don't move that over to your operating account, you cheated IRS, you deferred income. What I see, December settlements, a big settlement comes in December, let's forget about this until January. You can't do that. You got to move it over to your operating account as soon as possible after it's earned. So that's the biggest issue that I can see, both from IRS perspective, but also from the state bars issues.
So just because I know I'm going to get a bunch of questions about this, now, can you still claim it, let's say for 24, 25, right? So let's say you had some settlements that came through, the checks came in late in the year, like on the 27th, 28th. Do they need to rush by like the 31st to make sure they transfer that money over, or can they just claim it on 24 and move it over in early 25? Is that still possible?
No, I would not do that. Okay. 2-3 days, I think, is very reasonable to keep it in the trust account. So 2-3 days, I'm not worried. It's when it's longer than 15 days, 10, 15 days. You got the settlement 15th of December, and accidentally you forgot to move the funds over until January 2nd. That's a no-no. But you got the funds December 27, 28, right before Christmas, or right after Christmas, before New Year's. I'm not pushing it that much because it's so close. It's got to be reasonable. So what IRS is looking at, is this reasonable? 15 days is more than reasonable to say that you had the time to move the money. 2-3 days, it's not as reasonable.
Gotcha. Especially for companies or the states where they're auditing too, they're going to be, hey, what's going on here? That's a big one. I do, from a business standpoint, I do wonder, and I want you thinking from the lawyer standpoint, what are your thoughts on the auditing though? Because with the IRS, they're going to audit you if they see issues, right? With a random audit, I know of a firm in Iowa. That's how I know that they have this auditing rule. It was like a 3-4 week process where they were like in it for like 3-4 weeks. It was a big deal. They passed with flying colors, no issues at all, but it was just a lot of time and effort from them. It was extremely stressful. So I do wonder from a business standpoint, what are your thoughts on it?
So was this an IRS audit or state?
It was a state bar audit.
State bar audit. Yeah. Okay. So I haven't seen state bar audits yet because California is not mandating it's not implementing until next month. But I started my career as an auditor. So back in Sweden, in Stockholm, I started as an auditor, not as in tax, and we were going into companies, and they were hiring us. So it was not a random audit. Obviously, they hire us for bank purpose and all that, and we were digging into the details, man. We were looking at every single thing that we could, and was frustrating from clients. And that was not even random audit. They hired us to do that. And you could feel the frustration because they were spending so much time working with us, providing us a document. So I can just imagine how this state bar audits will be. First of all, you're not welcome to get there. Firms don't want you to be there as an auditor. And they're there, they're trying to dig out, they're trying to find mistakes, find issues. So I can see that being a huge, huge issue and frustration. And just from business perspective, it's going to suck your time and resources for sure.
Quick timeout.
Yeah.
Do we know is Tarl here? Do you know if the next guest is here by chance? Yes. He is here? Yes. Okay, awesome. With Becca. By the way, thank you for this. Awesome. Really. No, it's perfect. It's perfect. I appreciate it. Cool. I just had to figure if we had to stop at 9:30 or not. So, because I got more questions for you.
All right.
So I want to ask you about counsel to counsel. Tell me about this. What's the point behind it? What made you want to write the book?
Yeah, it's been one of my goals for the longest time. I never got to it until last year when we actually started writing it. But it's been back on my mind. I've been planning it. I've been drafting it, kind of ideas, what I want to write about. And the outline has been there for many years. And the reason is I want to show my story. I want to write about my firm. But I'm comparing it to a law firm. So counsel is basically, the title comes from counsel CPAs, us being a counsel, providing service to counsel, which is lawyers. And I want to compare those two, CPA firm, Emil's CPA firm, counsel CPAs, to a law firm, what I've done, mistakes I've done growing to where I am right now, even though I have a long way to go to where I want to be, but I've taken a few steps. And I'm showing examples from live client examples of mistakes that I've seen, but also success stories. So my clients and whoever reads it, whoever want to read it, can see that, first of all, if I'm doing these mistakes, there are better ways of doing it, but also get motivated by the ones that did it right. Yeah. I love telling the story, and I know we're running out of time, but it's about this law firm client of mine, and they give permission to me to talk about it. It's a West Coast trial lawyers in California. So one of the partners, Alan, called me up. This is 10 years ago probably. Called me up to this office in downtown LA. Said, Emil, I knew him from a different partnership. He used to have another firm, which they split up, and he partnered up with Nima instead. He called me up. Emil, can you come to our new office? We want to talk to you to see how we can help us. This is way before COVID, where people were actually going into offices at that time. I walked into this beautiful office downtown LA, huge high-rise, 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. And I knew that they had just opened up, so I was a little bit surprised even before walking in. And opening up the door, the office was set up for, 40, 50 people. I don't know how many people. All the desks were set up. Everything was set up, beautifully done, but nothing was there, like no people, nothing. And this was a weekday, and say, Alan, what's going on? Like, what is this? This your office? Or, yeah, this is our office. So where are the people? What's happening? Don't worry about the people. They will come. Just tell us how you can help us, what you can do for us, because we want to grow. That was really motivating, because I saw that they started this operation, their law firm, as a business. They had put their investor hat on from day one, even without having any employees. So I think that's a very good learning experience that we're talking about a little bit about counsel to counsel. And not everybody can do that. Obviously, it's about financials and you got to have the resources to do that. But if you can and you believe in yourself, I think you need to put your investor hat on from day one, and not try to put on 5-10 years after you open up the practice, because you will get used to old habits, which is not impossible to change, by the way. You can always change and make it better. But anyway, this was a motivating story that I usually like to share when we talk about firms and investors.
I really like that. I'm tempted to want to end it there, just because that is a great lesson for everyone. But I want to you had mentioned something, and I think I want to end on a different question. We can go a little bit over if we have to, but you mentioned the mistakes that you've made, and I think we learn from the mistakes, and I think it's easier to learn from the mistakes because even if it's someone else's mistake, we can kind of feel the pain that they've gone through. If you tell me, it's funny because you can watch like a Hormozy video or, a Gary Vee video and see all the great ways of doing things. But a lot of people don't do those things because, for a lot of reasons, they just don't feel the urge to, but they see, oh, Emil screwed up on this thing and this is what it cost him, or this is how it hurt him. I don't ever want to do that thing. So I do wonder, is there one thing you can look at since since it could be anything from, when your family moved to Sweden or when you moved to the States, that a mistake that you made that you've learned from, and the lesson that you learned is that you went and fixed it, that has had a substantial impact on your firm now.
Yeah. I can give you two examples, one from like personal life and one from business. From personal life, a mistake that I feel like I've done throughout most of my life is, coming to Sweden as a foreigner, you're trying to fit in. And it's not necessarily necessary for you to do that. Like, you don't necessarily need to fit in. It's important for you to do what you want to do, the way you want to do it, because that's you. And I think you're gonna do a lot better job and be a lot more successful if you're doing what you want to do it the way you want to do it, instead of trying to fit into the society or the whatever it is. It's a community. So that's something that I learned, and I didn't do that mistake when I moved to California again, because this is me, given that it's a lot easier to fit in whether you want to or not in California, because it's so much more diverse than it is in Sweden. But that's one lesson I talk about all the time.
That authenticity part of it.
Authenticity, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just be you.
Yeah.
Don't try to fit in. It's just be you, do what you want to do. And from the business world, biggest lesson, I wish I had specialized from day one. That was the biggest mistake I've done, that I took on any kind of client the way they wanted to work, not the way I think is the right way of doing. Because a lot of time clients come to me, they think they know what they need, but after I explain to them what we can do for them, say, oh my God, no one told me about this. I'm so glad I talked to you, because it clarified for me what you can do for me. I thought you were just filing a return for me and we'll see you next year again. So I wish I had done that from day one, specialized and do what I do best, instead of trying to serve everybody out there.
That's great advice. Thanks, Emil.
Thank you, Tyson.